Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Sacrifice for a Family, written by Random 3X. Akari, a large primate-like being, picked up his cards from the table before him, making sure to guard them closely with all four of his arms, which would have made even a gorilla feel like that he needed to hit the gym. Despite his size, the clumsiness many races would expect of Akari was nowhere to be found, as he had the finesse and control of a neurosurgeon. With a graceful motion, he threw a handful of chips into the center of the table, emptying for the round. "You know, I once heard a human got shot through the head and lived to tell about it," he said conspiratorially, eyeing the other players at that table. Vexa looked at her cards, licked her sharp teeth, which seemed to leave her with a permanent Cheshire grin. She was very much a boastful sort, making sure to always introduce her as being a wanted woman, specifying that she was wanted on 7 planets. What she always failed to mention was it was for her cooking skills and not anything criminal. Though, in her own words, she was happiest in the galley of the hollowed wing and had no intention of leaving any time soon. With a flick of her wrist, raised the pot. "Yeah, well, I heard that humans often eat toxic food because they like how the poison tastes," she added, having witnessed a human eat pure poison and only complain that it was mild. Cho'uk maneuvered his tentacles, seeming stuck on a decision, before finally folding. One of the most curious researchers this crew has ever encountered, he seemed determined to answer any question that popped into his head. Whether the question was appropriate at the time was a whole other situation that the crew relations team had many a chat about. "Well, I heard about a human who was sent back in time to kill his own grandfather," Chuck's translator module buzzed. Propus didn't even look at his cards and pushed his meager pile of chips into the middle. The insectoid, also nicknamed Jinx for his odds-defying bad luck, though many felt that it was likely to be near him, as any bad luck headed for them would ultimately change course to him. Despite all of this, his carapace was high and nigh indestructible, surviving all manner of blows that would have put down any other race. "All in," he said. "Though I have heard a human once lifted a transportation vehicle many tons in weight to rescue its larvae," it added. Finally, all eyes fell upon the last player at the table, a human who had a teasing smirk on her face as she moved a pile of chips into the middle, matching Propus's bet. "Well, I heard a human is going to win this pot," she said with a chuckle as the others joined in laughing. The others all called the bet, and it was time to reveal the hands. Akari revealed a pair of 7s. Vexa showed a full house, 7s over 4s. Propus showed a hand so bad it wasn't even worth mentioning, as he somehow had a scuffed Charizard card in the mix. Vexa let her grin show as she looked at the human Alice. "Come now, Alice, show us your hand, or is the pot mine?" Vexa playfully teased. "Very well," Alice said with a sigh. "Don't hate me for this," she said, revealing a straight flush. With the smuggest of grins, Alice began raking in the chips while the other players looked dejected. Alice couldn't help but feel evil doing this. She was wondering how they hadn't noticed there were more than 4 7s on the table. "I find it amazing that you have had 6 of those hands since we began playing this evening," Akari said aloud to no one in particular. Alice froze mid-rake, worried her sleight of hand had been discovered. "I guess luck is on my side tonight," she stuttered. Everyone just threw their heads back in laughter. "Alice, you really must teach us this human illusion trickery. What did you call it? Sleight of hand?" Chuck asked. The game had been played with cookies in place of actual tokens, and she told them that she would defy probability through a human trick, and if they caught her in the act, she would let them have her share of the cookies after the game was finished. But so far, no one had seen how she was doing it. Numerous attempts to explain how exactly she was doing it gave no results, and Alice was secure in knowing that she would get to enjoy her choco chip delights later. As she picked up the deck to deal another hand, the entire ship violently shook, and the emergency lights came on. The alarms began blaring as a voice came over the intercom. announcing to all crew have suffered a major reactor breach. I repeat, a major reactor crash. All the engineering crew and medical staff to the engine deck immediately. The message repeated itself 3 more times before ceasing. Looks like me and Akari are going to be busy, but I'll suggest you Propus accompany us, as we may require your brute strength, Alice said, going from relaxed to action in the blink of an eye. With all the swiftness they could manage, they arrived at the engine deck, followed not too far behind by Choke and Vexa. Akari immediately went through providing first aid to the injured, while Propus went to work moving the fallen heavy equipment. Seeing little else for her to aid with in those rears, Alice rushed up to the head engineer. "What's the situation?" she asked. "Look," came his meek reply, his eye stalks drooping as he indicated the viewing port for the reactor. Looking through, she saw that a number of fuel rods for the reactor had been knocked out by a crash and were spewing radiation. "Things are hopeless. We are already on emergency power, and the life support won't last long enough for the rescue to reach us," the head engineer explained, collapsing against the wall, resting his head in his 3-fingered hands. "What have you got the rods back in the reactor?" she asked hopefully. "Don't be foolish. That room is already at lethal levels of radiation, and is only growing. No one on the crew can survive going in there," he said, dismayed. Alice looked around the room. Her motley family helped everyone when moments ago they were lounging around, joking about her race's supposed invincibility. Resolving herself, she knelt down in front of the head engineer. "I can do it," she said with a smile. What the radiation?" he asked, confused. "Haven't you heard? I'm a human. We do this kind of stuff every day back home," she said, giving her bicep a flex and a slap. She could visibly see the hope return to his eyes. "Okay, I'll save our crew and I'll work on rerouting the energy the moment you've gotten the rods back in," he said with confidence returning to his demeanor as hope shimmered in his eyes. With a deep breath, Alice approached the side airlock that separated the reactor room from the engineering deck. Stepping in, she closed the door behind her. Looking through the window, Vexa was astonished. She had never put credence to the stories about humans, and now she will have one of her very own to tell. She saw Alice walk into the room, overflowing with deadly radiation, like it was nothing, and saw her wave at the window as she watched through. "By the wise butterfly, they really are invincible," she muttered, as more of the crew began watching the miracle happening before their very eyes, cheers of encouragement already building. Alice strained to pick up the first rod as it was considerably heavy, but with a heft she got it locked back in place. She repeated this a second, then a third time, finally locking in place the last rod. With a weary smile to the window, she gave a thumbs up. The crew exploded in cheers, chanting her name. "Alice! Alice! Alice!" Their voices becoming one in elation. With a hiss, the airlock door to the engineering deck opened, allowing Alice to walk out, looking exhausted. "Hey guys, I got the damn reactor fixed," she said with a smile. "You are welcome to my share of the cookies any time," Hikari said with a beaming toothy grin. "And mine," Chokes added. "Mine as well," Vexa added. "What are you talking about?" "I already won them," Alice replied with a weak grin. "I'm going to my quarters now. All that heavy lifting and excitement has made me tired," she said, walking away from the crowd that was still beaming at her. Many wished to follow her, to bring her gifts even, but her close friends persuaded the crew to let Alice rest up. The next day, Alice didn't show up at her post. The crew agreed doing a bit of extra work for her would be okay. She earned some rest. But the day after, she'd still not come out of her room, and the crew began to grow concerned. Worrying about Alice, Hikari went to her quarters and knocked on the door. "Alice, it's me, your favourite monkey man. Are you okay?" he said, but there was no reply. Trying the door panel, he found that it had been locked and disabled from the other side. "Alice!" Hikari began shouting in growing distress. Provis, hearing the disturbance near Alice's room and coming to get them to leave her be, turned the corner, only to rush over when he saw who it was. "What's the matter, Hikari?" he asked, concerned. "Alice is not responding, and she has disabled the door controls for the other side of the room," he said, with the fear in him growing. "I'll let the captain know immediately, and see if the rest of the gang can coax her out. Maybe she's just annoyed that we ate all the cookies in the end," he ventured hopefully, though his eyes shone with worry. That knew that it was very hopeful thinking. With the captain's permission, Propus broke the door open, and the entire team, Alice jokingly named her motley family, barged in. The sight before them horrified them. In her bed was Alice, but not Alice. She looked emaciated, like she hadn't eaten in weeks. Her hair seemed to have begun falling out, and she had red marks that looked like burns. Hikari began to approach when Alice shakily raised a hand to stop him. Don't come any closer, you dumbass, she said as a light spatter of blood came out of her mouth. I am basically a talking reactor rod at the moment. Didn't you wonder why I locked myself in? She asked with a very weak smile on her pale face. But you assured everyone that you would be okay. You made us believe that you were one of those ridiculous invincible humans, Vexa snarled in angerish. Why? Choke asked, his eyes moistening up with tears. Why? Alice echoed with a half-smile. Because you guys are my family. One thing you seem to miss in your stories about my race is that we would willingly die for our family, she said, a tear rolling down her cheek. It's not too late. I can give you some kind of treatment, Hikari desperately said, clearly grasping at straws. No, big monkey boy. I'm gonna, she insisted. Now do me a favor and leave whatever painkiller meds you've got in your med bay and reseal the door. You'll need to decontaminate this room after you make port, and, I don't want radiation leaking out and hurting my friends and family, she said with a force that seemed beyond what her appearance suggested was possible. Hikari's entire body almost balled up as he all but forced his own body to obey, leaving enough diamorphine for a dozen people to have pain relief for a month. With a weak smile, Alice waved goodbye as they closed the doors and had Tick, the head engineer, weld them shut. They all returned to their stations, feeling the weight of the heartbreak that was weighing down on them. It took another week for the ship to limp into port before they could open her room again. The station's decon unit made quick work of the room, handing over her effects to the captain, who in turn handed it over to the crew. It was a little lead box. Inside was a book titled Sleight of Hand So Easy, Even a Glomulan Can Do It, and a picture of Alice with them on her very first day aboard the ship. The crew never shared stories of human invincibility after that. They shared only tales of human bravery, of human self-sacrifice, and that for a short while, they had a human called them family. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.